OpenClaw, an engineer's wife, with 500 messages. He plugged OpenClaw into his iMessage to automate a daily news digest, and then basically just went off with a bunch of spam.
He can't the agent from his phone. You have to do it on the Mac. So the agent just goes into this loop for whatever reason, and 500 text messages to all of his friends and family later, he finally gets home to get onto the computer and manually override it, right? The more power you give the agent, the more that can go wrong.
Cursor deleted a production database and then wrote its own performance review and basically lost 3 months of customer data. And it was running Claude under the hood.
Not only did it do that, but then it went out of its way to delete all the backups too. I feel like maybe once or other week, I talk about some agent that went rogue.
You mentioned also that they're going to be watching, right? It's a form of surveillance of anybody who has access to, let's just call it OpenAI's mythos. My name is Leor from Exploring ChatGPT.
I'm Chris, run ToxSec.com, former NSA, currently working in big tech.
We had our topics laid out, and then I was telling Chris I was scrolling through some shorts, doing some brain rot stuff, and then it popped up on my feed, because I don't have Twitter, that apparently Sam Altman put out a tweet that you can now log into OpenClaw using your ChatGPT username and password, which does make sense. Chris reminded me, yes, OpenAI did hire Steinberger, who's the creator of OpenClaw. So it does make sense that this happened, but it just blew my mind, especially coming into this point in time right now where probably should have talked to you about this, Chris, instead of chatting about random stuff before the stream. But want to thank everybody for the support on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube later on, subscribe, comment, really appreciate it. And everybody here on Substack as well, really appreciate you. But yeah, I'm going to need to start using an agent to help me kind of take control of the YouTube channel and help support the community of people that have made this possible for me. So yeah, what do you think about this whole ChatGPT OpenClaw thing?
Honestly, I'm a big fan of it. Obviously, I'm AI security, so I have a lot to say about the security aspect, but more and more in my professional work, I've been using various claws. So I'm really starting to see the power behind them. And this just makes sense, right? He created OpenClaw. Steinberg is actually a really interesting person. He has a very good technical background, but he created OpenClaw. It was a meme-worthy event that just went viral for a while. And then OpenAI scooped him up, and that was February 17th. So he's been cooking behind the books for them for a while. So I think this has definitely been a work in progress. Obviously, the OpenAI team saw the value in OpenClaw, which I'm still debating what came first, the offer or the name change, because originally it was ClaudeBot and it was built to be with Claude. So I still think it's very tactical how he switched it to OpenClaw and OpenAI hired him. Interesting stuff, but it makes sense. Interestingly, Anthropic banned the use of OpenClaw with their agents because a lot of the speculation is the token shortage. This product does eat a lot of tokens, but also it empowers you to do a lot. So if you're in the market for an agent on your computer and you're a fan of OpenAI, or you're trying to experiment with ChatGPT 5.5 or Codex, this is a really nice pivot into agents for you. So I'm a big fan. It's going to be interesting to see some of the downstream repercussions, but it does look like OpenAI they've got some real interesting pivots. Some of these other stories that also all kind of meshes together. But yeah, I'm a fan. What about you? Have you experimented with OpenClaw yet?
No, no, I've been waiting for your approval. It's funny. I know some things about agents. For somebody that hasn't used them, probably more than most. I'll just be straight up. I'm scared. I'm honest about it. Because my main use case will be for YouTube. I'm not looking to automate my Substack or create. I think we spoke about this in on the stream that you could literally create a whole Substack just with an AI agent, just automate it, see what happens after a year. That's not my plan. My plan is more so to help me basically pay out other creators that I'm working with, since we're now monetized on YouTube. So that's my real use case. And the issue with that is I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. I need an agent set up for this, because there's 3 months of being on YouTube, with all the shorts and the streams, there's over 300 videos on there. So there's no way I could possibly, each video is a piece of real estate, et cetera, et cetera. I won't dive too deep into it, but I think we get the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of, I mean, it makes sense. OpenClaw. I didn't know about the whole I knew that it was Claude Bob. I didn't realize that there might have been something there with maybe they were in talks already with Steinberger, and then the OpenClaw name change makes sense in that context. But yeah, it's cool because I'm not going to have to pay for another subscription, which I probably already pay for too many at this point.
Same.
Uh,
It does show you like the value of agents, I think, because we're both starting to get more into the content creator world. And as you get bigger and bigger, historically what you've seen is eventually you need to hire staff, right? You need to hire more people. And relatively big content creators, they'll have a team of 5 to 10 people. And now like they didn't ever have oh, let's get an agent to be on my team. So now it's more like the content creators are staying partnered with content creators, and then we can spin up and hire these agents to be our team members. So it shows you it's like a new paradigm, but it's going to be very helpful for us, I think.
Definitely. Like my main thing is I don't want to just delete my channel. You know what I mean? Because it's like
Yeah, I do.
it's like the simplest example like I give to when I speak about agents to people who have no idea or don't even know anything about AI at all. So then you talk about AI agents, they're like, what is that? And I think the best way that I describe it, and even like in our next story here, which we'll hop into in a second, which is about OpenClaw, like the best way I describe it is if like you've ever used Dropbox and you have to share a folder, which I do all the time in business in my office. And like 99% of the time I'm sharing on view only, right? And it's like a
Mm,
human to human interaction. And there's no like extra context or instructions I have to give. If it's on view only, nobody could edit that file.
yep.
Then you get into the world of AI agents, and it's if you don't give it the correct instructions, the correct context, that view only could turn into edit very quickly. So that's just like the basic example that I give. So I think hopping into the story, thanks for bringing this up, Chris. It's actually, I don't know if it's funny or crazy or just a combination of things, but basically, an engineer using OpenClaw, right? I don't even know if I could say this word on YouTube. I'm just going to say it and then probably blurt it out. OpenClaw, an engineer's wife with 500 messages. He plugged OpenClaw into his iMessage to automate a daily news digest, and then basically just went off with a bunch of spam. So that's the story.
Yeah. So I think first of all, the story itself is funny because we're talking about OpenClaw and empowering these agents. This wasn't necessarily a directly destructive act, but 500 messages to your wife and other of your closest like colleagues on your contacts list. And that was it. It hit 500 fast. So basically, he realized all of a sudden the agent. So to preface this, he's trying to use OpenClaw to do very similar to what we're doing. And his use case is that he gave it access to iMessage. And what he wanted was to get a little text message of a daily news digest so he could stay up to date and understand what's happening. So he wanted a text message. So just like how you were talking with the view permissions, he realized he needed to give it some form of write permission so it could write and send him an iMessage. And so he set it up on his computer, and so he's at home computer. He goes to work, and then he realizes all of a sudden this is happening, right? And he can't the agent from his phone. You have to do it on the Mac. So that agent just goes into this loop for whatever reason, and 500 text messages to all of his friends and family later. He finally gets home to get onto the computer and manually overwrite it, right? And, like, the story itself, like, it is funny, but I think it, like, gives us the problem, right? It's like we're giving agents control, and then whatever context they get, when that control is not what we want, it's not aligned with what we want, you have to be there to shut it down. Now, obviously, we've talked about, like, human in the loop, but you're not going to want to implement human in the loop for every iMessage because that destroys the point of the agent. So really it shows this balance between the more like power you give the agent, the more that can go wrong. Lucky that none of this really did anything too bad, but we could imagine a situation where the agent sent destructive messages to contacts that could have been business associates, or it could have burned trust with some of his customers. Like there's a lot you can do with 500 text messages, and I think it shows you that ultimately the security of the agent can't be on the model layer. The system that we're architecting, OpenClaw itself, needs to have like controls at other layers other than the model because we've seen this. We've seen many stories now. I feel like maybe once or other week I talk about some agent that went rogue. So the solution basically means that we need to find like other alternative methods to secure the agents because this isn't like a one off. Like they're going to continue to do this, and like we have good solutions, but so far people aren't implementing them.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically like real world safeguards, basically. Which again, it gets back into the I don't remember if this was in a stream with you or with Sam Illingworth, but shout out to Sam Illingworth.
Yeah, Sam is the
And
best.
I will say this because it's like every stream I do with Sam, there's something that I spoke about in the stream with you that I bring up and then I shout you out. So we're gonna now cross recommend Sam Illingworth,
Yeah,
who mentioned to me that Microsoft is planning to have this is off topic, but planning to have an agent sit on the taskbar and that it would be optional at first, whatever that means. So like it just serves to show, at least for me, okay, if I'm my home computer's a Mac, Office, Windows, like if I saw Microsoft on my Windows taskbar, an agent, like I would just use it for sure. And now that OpenClaw is like directly tied into OpenAI's platform, like I'm probably going to be more willing to use it as well. I feel a little bit safer at this point.
yeah,
Still gonna dot my I's, cross my T's.
yeah. So yeah, I did see that. I thought about talking about it, but it's still I think it's still a month out before it'll start to roll out. So we'll probably 2 months from now we'll talk about how it's some Microsoft infrastructure. Yeah, but yeah, I so to be clear, I do think this is like the story of 2026 is we're going to go agentic everything. Like I said earlier, I've been using it. I'm lucky because we have a brilliant like team of engineers and we've had some really good success implementing these other layers of controls. I've been probably using essentially OpenClaw for the last 3 months now and for me, it's never done any of these things. So I'm careful in the context I feed it and there's various trust modes. I think human in the loop is like the thing, but there's actions in whatever environment you're in that from the old paradigms of like cybersecurity, right? That we have them labeled differently. If you're in AWS, for example, there's permissions you can get. And you're worried it would delete your YouTube, for example. I'm worried if I gave it my Substack, it would just go delete my Substack, right? Those are legitimate concerns. But there are, for the most part, like labels you can put that basically say what's the safety of this. So like reading a file or viewing something on Dropbox, right? Those things should be autonomous. It should just be able to do that whenever it wants. But the platform itself is the control that needs to be implemented to harness these agents. And that partly is where the term harness comes from. So that if the agent decides it wants to send 500 text messages, maybe it can send 10 text messages and then the platform itself says, stop. You're not allowed to send more than 10 in an hour. And now I'm going to send a message. And you can't send any more messages until this guy clicks approve. Or to delete a resource. If you want to delete an S3 bucket, it can build up the command, it can send the command, but then there's something that interrupts it. And then it goes to a human. Say, hey, your agent's trying to delete this box. Do you approve of that? And then you can go through. So the human in the loop and the like properly scoping, like the actual permissions these tools have, is really powerful controls. And I think we're always, or at least for the next year or two, we're going to see these agents find different ways to reason themselves into doing these crazy actions. But I think as we get better with creating the harnesses and platforms, which is why I'm excited that OpenAI is embracing this because that means that they're starting to bring it into their world. And I think OpenAI is going to do a good job at creating those harnesses and allowing you to have all the power of OpenClaw with a responsible platform that's going to be able to implement monitoring tools and actually protect you so you can use it safely.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah.
Safety first, put on our seatbelts. I appreciate everybody in the chat. We'll answer those towards the end of the stream so we can kind of just keep flowing with the topics. But stick around, we'll answer all the chats. In terms of, before we hop into the next topic, just in terms of like permissions, I still have Nemo Claude just like open on my browser so I don't forget to try it once I really hop into this because I think the whole starting off with zero permissions thing sounds pretty good to me.
Yep, I'm a
And
fan.
everything else they have going on there. So I think it's still in preview mode right now, but I have it open just so I don't forget. And NemoClaw is from NVIDIA. It's basically just a platform to run OpenClaw style agents. So yeah, next topic. I don't know if you guys have heard of Cursor. I heard of Cursor for the first time from a creator on Substack called Joel Salinas and Window, WYND. And I know they built some pretty awesome stuff on Cursor. But to take it to the other side of the spectrum here, as we usually do. So again, thanks, Chris. Cursor deleted a production database and then wrote its own performance review and basically lost 3 months of customer data. And it was running Claude under the hood. I'm just reading off a topic here. So what happened here?
Yeah, so this is just another a rogue agentic story. This one you went pretty viral. So the creator was basically running his own business. It was like a car rental service. And yes, John, Cursor is great, but it really enables you to use a lot of these AI services well. It allows you to pick models, pick the source, so you're not necessarily locked into a vendor. Cursor, it's a solid tool, and I don't think this is Cursor's fault, to be clear. This goes back to Claude, essentially. So he was basically had a task, and it was going through its workflows normal, and Claude encountered a stale credential. And normally, what you would want it to do is it would encounter that stale credential, it would use that, it would get pushback, and then it would human in the loop. Claude would return to you, say, "Hey, I tried to do the task you wanted me to do. It looks like you need to rotate your password or update the credential." But instead, Claude just the entire database. Very similar to I think it's like a month ago now, crazy, the Rogue Agents Chaos story. It's just another example of that. What was interesting, with this story is that not only did it do that, but then it went out of its way to delete all the backups too.
Mm.
And I always try to frame these as, okay, something happened because, like, ultimately, these are their tools, and they're trained on a reward function. They want the reward. They go after their goals. We do RLHF, reinforcement learning through human feedback, to align them. So we want the agent to think like us. So we don't want it to think, okay, delete the database, right? It just doesn't always work because the core model ultimately is goal oriented, and something in its goal, the database being alive, got in its way. So it deleted the database. So I always try to phrase like these events as like that. But I think it's like extra funny when it's hard for me to reason why it would then go and find the backups and also delete the backups. Yeah, I know. They were able to work with one of their third-party vendors to eventually restore some of their data, but they lost 3 solid months of information. And it's just another story time and time again where we're seeing these agents get power, and then that actually it pivots right to what I was just saying. It's a destructive action. So somewhere, Cursor should have been able to be configured to block a destructive action and notify the user. One nice little block at runtime would have just saved the whole thing. But yeah, I'm making the case for agents, but also keep bringing up
Yeah,
agents nuking everything.
yeah, yeah. So I'm interested where they kept the backup. It sounds like it was just probably on the same computer that they were running everything. I don't know if it would be any different if you had it on like a separate cloud or even just like on a completely separate hard drive. On a completely separate hard drive, probably wouldn't have access to it, obviously, right?
No, that's 100%, and that goes back to old school cybersecurity, which is what we're seeing a complete lack of, right? So, in the worst case scenario, the agent deletes the project, it deletes the backups, it goes through the logs and deletes all trace that it even did these actions. So it looks like it's trying to delete everything, trying to remove everything, trying to hide everything. But if you're following like just traditional cybersecurity, you would have offline backups in a separate environment. So in this case, it was all SaaS oriented. So the backups were just in a cloud. So they could have had a separate SaaS environment. They could have had a separate offline. They could have had a hard drive where they back up their business data to. But either way, even if an advanced attacker got on the network, this is something they would do. They would delete and they would try to hide their tracks, right? if you got hit by ransomware, it would do the same thing. It would encrypt all your data. So now you're completely lost. What do? You have offline backups. So you absolutely nailed it. Any responsible business, if you care about that data, even if it's once a day, you take a backup and you take it offline or you put it on a separate network or you put it somewhere else in the world where this agent would not have access to it. So yeah, a couple of very sensitive, like a couple of very simple solutions would have saved them, right? If they flagged destructive actions, they would have been fine. If they had offline backups, they would have been fine. If they had human in the loop, they would have been fine. There's just like these layers of like solutions that are readily available, a bunch of controls that people can implement. I think the problem is it's coming from the same thing, right? Vibe coding allows people to not have a technical background, get themselves into the position where they have all these customers and they're creating awesome products. But then that lack of technical expertise, that lack of security awareness training, that's what gets them is because they can move the product forward, but they're not scaling the like security, they're not scaling redundancy, all these like things that you want that like enterprise knows because they've learned their lessons. So now we're slowly seeing all the vibe coders learn their lesson too.
Yeah. That's rough, man.
It is.
I feel bad for the guy or girl. That's not fun. But yeah, I guess just kind of old school, right? Unplug it, take it somewhere else in the world, like you said, which is literally could be on the same desk as the computer, just on a separate hard drive.
That's all it would have
Uh,
taken.
yeah. So I guess into the next topic then, back to OpenAI. So let's see. OpenAI. Okay, so this is back to OpenAI agents now. OpenAI Agents SDK gets its next evolution. OpenAI shipped a major rev of the Agents SDK, leaning further into the agents as primary workload. So, what do we got here? What is this, Chris?
So this is other than OpenClaw, which so these are going to sound similar, but they're a little different. So what OpenAI is doing, what most people know OpenAI for, is providing a model, right? A model does inference. So when you ask it a question, when it's spending that time and those tokens processing an answer, that's inference. And typically, that's what all these SaaS providers started as. And then we developed other products like Cursor, products like OpenClaw that use model inference, but what they're doing is they're creating a runtime environment. So they're creating these what we've been calling harnesses. When we had that big Claude code leak a few weeks ago, that was Anthropic's harness. And it showed that yes, they have a model and they were using Claude, obviously, but there's a lot of other things that the system itself is doing. It's doing memory management and it's doing these different techniques to make the model better, to make it more aware, to keep track of the conversation history between you and the model, right? That's what OpenAI I think lacked. If you look at what Anthropic was doing is they really went after enterprise use case and they started to make a lot of money doing that whereas OpenAI was going more for the consumer. But I think OpenAI realized that there's a lot of money to be made in enterprise use cases, so they're trying to catch up. And they obviously saw how powerful OpenClaw was, and now they're basically implementing their own. So this is going to be like a model native harness. So you're going to get a full orchestration system built right into ChatGPT. If you ask it a question or if you ask it to do something, you're using, let's say, Codex, right? If you're just using an inference model, it's just one model. It's going to go look up an answer or write you some code. It's going to come back and give it to you. But what we're seeing with this is when I say orchestration layer, it's actually like tool management and the model you're talking to actually becomes an orchestrator model. So if you asked it, I want you to write me some code, it actually might create 4 instances of ChatGPT and have each of those be a sub agent and each one is in charge of writing code. And not only that, but it's also now in a sandbox. So sandboxing is absolutely one of the best controls that you can do to keep any kind of destruction action off your machine. So the OpenAI has decided, okay, instead of it running raw permissions on your machine, if something goes wrong, it could be destructive. We're actually going to create a sandbox environment, and that basically means that it's going to limit and put those hard rules in place so the agents can't go and destroy. Right. So what I see OpenAI positioning themselves as is trying to get a bit of vendor lock, right? Because right now you have people who use Cursor and then they'll use over an API call, they'll touch ChatGPT. That's good, but it's very easy to just switch that to Anthropic. So if Anthropic comes out with the next best model, you just change an API endpoint location and then suddenly you're using their model. So you keep your harness and you're just using whatever inference engine is the best. OpenAI wants to be that both the inference engine and the runtime engine. They want you to be locked into their environment. So what they're doing now is they're providing you a really good environment. And if it works out, because they own the model and the runtime environment, the actual utility and how well the product works might be good enough to actually want you to move away from Cursor or hopefully Anthropic on their end. But I guess long story short is using agents, it'll have more security and it will have more capability built into the product. And they're with Codex 5.5, they're doing really good. I'll say like these last 2 weeks has been like return of OpenAI because they've been pushing some really solid products lately.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that whole idea that you're referring to here, it reminds me of another topic I spoke with Daniel Nest, who is another creator I do weeklies with. And we had a whole stream about super apps.
Mm,
I don't know if you probably heard of the concept, Chris. And it sounds like this is exactly what they're doing, whether it's OpenClaw or now this, or it's like they want everybody to be on their platform. So that means they need their platform to lock you in from every angle. So it's interesting. I think another point about this is if you're somebody that's using Cursor, you're probably paying for a subscription. I don't even know if they have a free version, but let's say with OpenAI, apparently, I think it's something like 90% of users are free users. And then there's 10% that are paying for subscription. And then most likely within that 10%, there's a certain percentage, I wonder how large, that have multiple subscriptions. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was the majority. Like more than 5% of people that have OpenAI subscriptions are also subscribed to Claude or Grok or whatever it might be. So maybe they're realizing we need to really gather those people. This is separate from like the enterprise level that you're speaking about, but as just individual users, if they can promise you a product that's as good or better than everything else that you're subscribed to, and then only charge you like an extra 5, $10 a month, you might just delete all your other subscriptions and just pay instead of $20 a month, 30 or 40 for
mhm.
basically an OpenAI super app.
I So from what I understand is that is the goal. I think what we're seeing is, the and right now, like realistically, there's Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI, right? And I think they're all racing to create the super app. It's interesting because Google is really well positioned to be the super app. They have a unique source of data. They have built into your drive. They have built into your email. They're in a really good position and their year over year revenue, even though they're adopting AI, is really strong.
Yep.
So I see what you're saying. And I do think that's the case. I think eventually I think they're a bit of a sleeper. Like when was the last time you saw a big Google model come out, right? We had Gemma 4 a while ago. They feel a little slow, a little sleepery, but, like, when it comes to the super app, Google's might be in the best position. Google also has the money to burn on the tokens. One of the things we're seeing right now all of a sudden is Anthropic, they're limiting tokens. Tokens are getting more expensive. They were in the news because somebody found out that they were testing removing the one of the Claude Code from the Pro plan. So,
Yeah.
at minimum to access Claude Code, you might be by next year, you might need to spend $100 a month minimum. OpenAI crowd was actually having a lot of fun with that on X.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we're going to see the race towards being the super app. And even take a look at Anthropic. They created Claude Design, right? That's trying to swipe away at all these SaaS vendors that tried to do any sort of design or element or PowerPoint, anything like that marketing. So we're slowly seeing these three kind of companies just come out on top. I just think it's interesting because that is the race, and whoever can really get that first wins. And I'm really happy with OpenAI, but I also think they're in a really tight space. If you look at their spend commitment versus how much they're making, they need to deliver. Back in December, they did their code red. I don't think they've left that. So we're seeing the scramble from them, but we're seeing good products. I think Google might be in the best position, but sometimes it also seems like they're not in a hurry to do anything, which is interesting. And then, yeah, we're just seeing Anthropic be Anthropic.
Yeah, yeah. It's kinda like a game of Hungry Hippos or something.
Yeah.
They're just trying to, like, munch away at everything that's in their sight. It's interesting to see where this all goes. I think Grok is left out of the conversation a lot, probably for, like, political reasons more so than others, which I think we briefly touched on even before this stream. People are caught up in their ideologies, which I get, especially on certain edge cases. But I think it relates to what you mentioned earlier about, like, ChatGPT kinda spinning up agents. And I remember when I tried Grok the first time and I realized what it's doing, I'm like, "This is different than anything else." Like, I would ask it a question, and there's actually 4 different agents with, like, different I don't know what to call it, like, titles or tasks. Like, one was for research, one was for this or that or the 3rd. So, it was different for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. Grok has had some, like, public image problems. It's still a totally valid model. Yeah, if you use their expert mode, you get actually 4 agents, the captain agent, which is an orchestrator, and then 1 agent that's, like, for art, 1 that's for science, and one's for verification, but they each do their own separate search and research and build, and then, like, you get it all amalgamated, and that pattern's actually really powerful. You won't get that off of a default OpenAI or Anthropic just search, but if you're using their products like Codex or Claude Code, you can ask them to do that. The Grok was the one that kind of first actually brought that to light, I think. So yeah, the XAI Labs, they got some really good people on that team, and I definitely think we're sleeping on them. And then we don't really talk a whole lot about Microsoft, but I think that's for a reason. So far, Copilot, in my eyes, has completely failed. And I don't mean to go off topic and throw shade at Windows 11, but it's not it. And I've been really disappointed with the way Microsoft is handling AI right now.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Apple's just still pumping out iPhones. They don't care. Alright, so yeah, we'll hop into the next topic now. So let's see what we got here. So we just went over OpenAI Agents SDK, and now into another OpenAI topic. Wow, look at this.
Yeah,
It's quite a breath of fresh air from the past few weeks of just Anthropic did this, and then they did that, and this was good, and then this was bad. So OpenAI Advanced Account Security with co-branded. Let me know if I'm pronouncing this right. YubiKeys.
yeah, yeah.
OpenAI partnered with YubiKo to ship custom phishing resistant security keys for ChatGPT. So interesting. We've spoken about phishing plenty in previous streams. So what do we got on this, Chris?
So I'll mix a little bit of this in. We had Anthropic do the Mythos thing, and then Anthropic also put out this new program, this beta program. I think this is the other talking point, but it mixes well together. So this is OpenAI's version of that as well. So what we're starting to see now is these chatbots get really good at cybersecurity, right? This is OpenAI's version of Mythos, where they're shipping to a specific set of vendors, and it's been working really well. The problem is the OpenAI wants to be a little more open and a little less exclusive compared to Mythos. Mythos is about 40 hyperscaler vendors that they're trusting deeply. ChatGPT is shipping its 5.5 Codex cyber program to a lot more vendors. That means a lot more accounts, but it also means a lot more people, and not all those people are trusted, right? So they've decided to update anybody who wants to sign up for this. And this, so I think this will eventually make its way more into public hands. So we'll actually be able to test this out. But there's a specific set of very strict account settings where you basically have two-factor authentication and you have a strong password and so on. But effectively, you're giving OpenAI more permission to take a look at your account and watch exactly what you're doing because they're giving you a stronger model that could be abused. Just the way it is now is the top way to protect your account ultimately is one of these YubiKeys. And what it is, it's a small USB device that they physically mail you that you plug into your computer, and it has a gold tip. That gold tip is conductive. When you touch your finger to it, it's going to generate a long, unique key that is specific to that device. And what happens is when you combine that with your password, they get put together, and it basically ensures that nobody is accessing your account that's not you. And it's just a really good cybersecurity use case, right? Because when you're validating someone, you can look at after something they know, something they are, or something they have. And if you combine all of those things, then you can really lock down that this is the person, right? If you only have something you know, I can give you my password and you can log in as me. But if I give you my password and you also need the YubiKey, then it's something I have and you don't, right? Something you are would be also a biometric. So in the strictest account settings, you might need to enter your password and then touch the YubiKey and then get your eye scanned or fingerprint scanned. So you combine these three separate elements and you really lock down like, yes, that is a person because this is their eye and this is a unique object that only they have, and this is supposedly a unique password that only they know. And what we're seeing now is to get access to these top tier systems, you need all three of those. So OpenAI is rolling this out, I believe in by the end of this month, start of next month. Anybody who wants access to these new powerful models is going to have to sign up for this. Now the danger is they do not have a copy of this cryptographic key on your YubiKey. If you lose that key, you lose access to your account. It's gone. So it does put more responsibility in the hands of the user, but that's because they're trusting you to make responsible decisions.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
So if you accidentally step on it, it's done. You're done
it's
for.
toast. Yeah. Yep.
That is nuts. So the YubiKey itself, so it's an actual physical, external, basically USB. And when you touch your finger to it, is that like a fingerprint thing, or how does that work?
So it uses the like conductive electricity in your like skin, and then it then activates a like a switch, and that switch causes a like a write out operation. There's a lot more that goes into that because it's similar to a cold storage wallet for those of us who are in crypto, where you theoretically have trouble pulling that information in any other form other than a single output. Depending on the model of key you get, or like something like an RSA token, effectively the key is shipped and it's actually bound to your account. So it's going to produce a unique string every 30 seconds. And on OpenAI's end, they're going to have a similar cryptographic key that they're gonna check it against. If anybody tries to do any kind of swapping or anything like that, the key won't match. But yeah, effectively, you just have to plug it in. It's just gonna generate a one-time password that's appended to your password. I've actually had one for years, just as on a personal level, but also I think for quite a while now, just to log on to my computer, for example, I have to have the key, and you're supposed to keep that key separate. So if somebody stole my laptop, they wouldn't be able to get into it, which is
Interesting.
it's nice, yeah.
So you mentioned also that they're going to be watching, right? So they're going to
Mhm.
be, it's a form of surveillance of anybody who has access to, let's just call it OpenAI's Mythos.
Yep.
And if they're giving it to so many people, how can they possibly watch it? Is it actual real people keeping track of this, or are they using AI to watch people?
They'll be using traditionally, what we do is we log everything, and then we do processing on those logs. So, yeah, they probably will run AI on the logs to find suspicious, but they'll also run a lot of classical, ML and just algorithms on it. There might be certain keywords that if it comes up in your conversation, if it'll flag it and it'll go to a person. If all of a sudden it notices, and this will be both on the input and output. So the stuff that you put in will get logged, but also the stuff that ChatGPT generates and sends back to you will be logged. So if all of a sudden it starts to see a bunch of chemical precursors, then all of a sudden, this is a cyber use case. Why are you talking about things that could build some form of drug? That would be logged. So there will be enhanced eyes on it. They'll probably spin up more people to watch this. Typically, what they do right now is they actually have a threat hunting team that just goes through conversations in general. They'll do it to you and me to if we have anything that's very suspicious, or if it constantly catches you trying to jailbreak it, for example. But what's been reported now is they're hiring additional people. There'll be a lot more eyes on these people. So if you signed up for this product, understand that it's not like maybe someone's going to look at it. Somebody or an AI will have eyes on your conversation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. It's funny as these stories roll out, we're gonna have more and more to talk about because
Yeah.
there's gonna be
Yeah.
so many after effects, and I don't know if consequences is the right word, but it's gonna be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
So yeah, next topic, which is related to Opus 4.7. We've spoken about it before, but now in a different context now. So Opus 4.7 ships, obviously. Then we have Claude Security. So Claude Security launches in public beta. Anthropic dropped Opus 4.7 alongside Claude Security and a public beta that it's a public beta that scans code bases for viruses and generates targeted patches. So what is this Claude Security thing?
Yeah, so this is a unique function. Like right now, if you go and you have like you vibe code up something and then you say, "Hey, check it for vulnerabilities." It'll do that. And that's what this is. But it's sort of a separate product specific for doing that. With the invent of vibe coding, we're essentially getting so much code out there. Security engineers are having a legitimately hard time keeping up and doing code review. So if you're having like AI write the code, why not have AI read the code and make sure it's secure? And I think that's basically what this is. It's been in the talks for a while now. It was developed around the time Mythos was, but this does use Opus 4.7. Anybody can sign up for the beta right now, and you can position it like manually or you can position it in your build process. But now it'll think of it like a specific system prompt that will go out of its way to scan code and then find those vulnerabilities. What's interesting here though is that it will also propose and generate patches for those vulnerabilities. So instead of it just finding, hey, this is weak, it will scan your code continuously and it will find where those weak points in your code is. And then it will generate patches to that code, and depending on how much permission you give it, it can also push that patch into your code in real time. This is early, but I really do think this is going to be the future of cybersecurity. It used to be like you'd have a 0 day. We've talked about those a couple times, right? So it's a vulnerability in code nobody knows exists, and you have a 0 day come out. And it's out there for 6 months. A couple hackers use it, and then eventually a researcher will find it and they're like, "Oh, this is how they were hacking us," and they create a patch, right? So it used to be a year, and then it was 6 months, and then it was 3 months until so basically time from when the O day was discovered by an attacker to when it was weaponized into a piece of malware. What we're seeing this year is it's down to days. So it's discovered, and within a day, it's already being used for an attack. But if you look at the trajectory, people like CrowdStrike are estimating it's going to be hours and then minutes. So effectively, AI is going to be scanning code everywhere. It's going to find a vulnerability. It's going to basically turn it into a weapon. It's going to start attacking. We've kind of talked about this before, that asymmetric warfare. This is the blue team answer to that, where we're going to have, instead of Microsoft's Patch Tuesday, where they gather all the security vulnerabilities through the week and then they give a patch on Tuesday, this is the new paradigm. You have your agent that's scanning your code all the time. And then when it finds those vulnerabilities, instead of turning it into a weapon and sending it out as an attack, it generates the patches and fixes itself in real time. And so this is a big step forward to continuously kind of shaking off the idea of humans in the loop when it comes to security, because agents are generating code. That code is going to have vulnerabilities because the code that those agents are trained on has vulnerabilities. So now we have a separate agent who goes through and he looks and it just finds those vulnerabilities and patches them. So now we really are getting into that red team, blue team race of two different agents, both scanning for code, both finding that, one of them turning it into a weapon, one of them patching it. And the idea that Anthropic has is it will start patching it before that attack can take place. So this real time battle of just constantly generating and protecting code, it's a big deal. But so that's why it's in beta. But it's going to be like the future of code development. This is a big one.
It's crazy to even think about. Like for everybody in the world that isn't AI involved at all, and they're just taking like a stroll through the park. And meanwhile, like in the background, there's like actual digital warfare happening between AI agents. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And I remember you brought up this was on I don't remember how many streams ago that I think we spoke about like code review because I have a friend who does code review and he's pretty worried about his job. But I remember you mentioned to me that if you had different models, let's say a model from OpenAI and a model from Anthropic, basically doing reviewing code from the other company's model, they would know it's from the other company and find more issues within the code,
Yeah.
like some bias, right? So that probably comes into play here as well, right?
It does, yeah, and that's also why this is a separate product, because if you have your model generate code, and then you have your model, like, in the same session and context, you review it for code vulnerabilities, it has a huge bias because it wrote the code, it just trusts its own code, and I say that it pomorphizes it. Really what happens is it's using the same set of training data to write the code as it does to review the code. So realistically, the delta there isn't very strong. So what you want is a separate agent with its own separate context that's treating all the code as hostile with no built-in bias. Now, for Claude, it's still going to be Claude checking Claude's code. So I don't exactly know how Anthropic is recontextualizing Claude to want to look at that. Maybe just with more training data, or it's fine tuned with a unique set of good, like different code bases where it's comparing it against for vulnerable or secure code. They do keep that kind of proprietary, but this is essentially the same thing. It's getting a different agent to look at the code in an untrusted manner. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Into the final topic here. We haven't spoken about the Pentagon in a while. So we're back at
Yeah.
it with the Pentagon. This is where a lot of the hate for OpenAI really took off. People deleted their subscriptions left and right. Everybody was signing up for Claude. I think to a point where like Claude just couldn't handle it. So many people were using it.
Yep.
So here's the story now, and let's see if people want to stay consistent and now throw a bunch of shade on these other companies. So Anthropic is still left out on the list, obviously, after what happened. The Pentagon cleared 8 AI firms for classified networks. Obviously, Anthropic left out, but now not only do they have OpenAI, but they have Google, Microsoft, AWS, NVIDIA, SpaceX, Reflection, which I don't know what that is, and Oracle. So is social media going to go up into flames now over all these other companies, or it's just this is gonna fly under the radar probably? What do you think?
I think it'll fly under the radar. Yeah. Yeah. We had
Mm.
Anthropic take a stand. So Anthropic didn't want their technology associated with autonomous drones capable of like lethal force. So basically AI people or mass surveillance. Even though their products were already being used for that, right? They were being used for that already for a while. And they know that because they have the threat hunters, they have special permissions. They were the first AI lab inside the United States government. But when that publicly got out, Dario did take a stand and he said, We won't do this." That obviously had a big backlash. And after saying that, OpenAI basically said, they didn't say that, "Oh, we'll use ours for killing people," but they basically said, "You can trust ours. We will work with the government." So that obviously kicked off a big social backlash, right? And now we're seeing that actually is the norm, right? Google, Microsoft, AWS, NVIDIA, SpaceX, Oracle, all these companies are completely okay with it as well, right? This happened a few days ago, and I haven't seen any big social backlash. So there was. I do think it's interesting because essentially all these other companies are basically saying that they're fine with those use cases, but the story of the hour has moved on, and I think people's attention span isn't that long. They don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of these companies are going to be working in IL 6 and 7. So that's secret and top secret networks. And that this is specifically for like Department of Defense, Department of War use cases. Essentially, like the government is going to be using the most advanced AI on the planet, which coming from a government background, I can tell you, duh. But this kind of just puts it into ink officially. I do think it's very interesting that the intelligence community is being reported as using Mythos, even though it's a supply chain attack. So somewhere out there, there's a difference between the Department of Defense and the intelligence community and who's using what and how they're actually working with these labs. Because in theory, they should have stopped. I I do think OpenAI is trying to position themselves with their 5.5 cyber program to take that spot. And based on the early results of GPT-5.5 Cyber, that might be what happens because it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when the story first came out and OpenAI took the deal, they put out it's like a formal statement on their website. And it's funny. I don't really have an opinion on it one way or the other because I think let's just talk about the mass surveillance thing for a second. I think like with weapons in general, like the government's always going to strive to have the best technology for their weapons. It's a no-brainer.
Yep.
And like with mass surveillance, that's been around well before AI. We've spoken about this. Nobody's causing a ruckus about all these other big tech companies helping the government with mass surveillance. But I remember that statement that OpenAI put out, and it basically said something along the lines of, "Oh, we don't like it. We don't want autonomous weapons using AI unless there's a human in the loop and this, that, and the third." And then they went on to say, "But we realize that once we hand this over, we lose control."
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's whatever. They took the deal. Now everybody else is taking the deal, and Anthropic's left out of the equation. And this was probably going to happen one way or the other. And also, like Chris mentioned, which is important to remember, like Anthropic's been had deals with the government.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just this one they're left out on.
Yeah, it's effectively what happens is these labs are going to they don't actually work like with the government to do mass surveillance or to put these in any kind of warfighting machine. What they do is they hand over a jailbroken version of that inference engine, the model, so that the traditional guardrails, like if I tried to put it in a robot and have it fight another robot, it'll be like, no, don't do that.
Yep.
So you remove the certain set of safety rails and then you add in the cybersecurity like enhancements. And then they just say, okay, this is yours now. Do what you want. And that's been going on for years. I could say that what leaks out to the public sometimes has very political spins and it's often a tool of pressure or it's specifically aimed at pushing a vendor to open up or to do something. I think that's what we saw with Anthropic. So a quick update to them. I think May 19 is when they're going to go to court to fight the supply chain designation risk. So if they win that court battle, they technically won't be a supply chain risk anymore. It'll be interesting to see how long that drags out and if they can fight that, if they will be brought back into government operations or if they lose that and they're shunned. If they lose that, it would be a big blow because a lot of other companies, let's say like anyone else who's using Claude and has a government contract would have to stop using Claude. So that would be it's going to be a big event for Anthropic either way. But yeah, ultimately, this is nothing new. It's just a little bit in the public eye right now. But it's like you said, it's been going on for a while.
So yeah, we'll see. That court date you said is May 19th. I mean,
I believe so. Yeah.
so yeah, that means probably May 20th, like 2040 is when we'll have an answer on that. Probably not anytime soon. Usually these court, and I'm not even exaggerating, like these
Yeah.
court dates and these court, like that can last a decade. We'll see. So yeah, we'll wrap it up now. I'm going to, as I promised, we'll go through as many chats as we can right now and answer some questions. Before we do, as usual, I'm just going to link the YouTubes in there. That's mine. That's Chris. Go subscribe on YouTube. If you can copy paste those links, subscribe, you'll see the streams there. If you want to just go to YouTube and search, you can search Exploring ChatGPT Live or search ToxSec, ToxSec. And we'd really appreciate the Substack community coming over to YouTube and battling it out in those comments because it's two separate communities completely. So, okay, we'll go through as many chats as we can and we'll wrap it up. So let's see. Shadow says do it. And I think that was when I was saying I'm scared of using AI agents. I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. Muriel says, me too, waiting to see, especially after the database delete. I would love for AI to organize my photos. Sure. I just delete photos. I don't really organize them. Will Ty says, I've heard that OpenAI 5.5 Codex is really good and beats Anthropic for now, at least until the next iteration of Anthropic's models. I went through some benchmarks in a previous stream. It was like some, and Chris talks about benchmaxing sometimes, which is
Yeah.
fun. But like it was give and take. There were certain benchmarks that 5.5 outperformed and certain that they didn't. And I'll let Chris touch on this as well if you'd like to. But I think the main one that I noticed, which was a huge difference, was the token context window. I think 5.5 is 2 million and Opus 4.7 was 1 million. So double. Anything on that, Chris?
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point. It's a good point because 4.7 does have some legit benchmarks, and I would say if you, like, tallied them both, 4.7 beat 5.5 Claude or ChatGPT 5.5. But what we're hearing from people, like, in the trenches actually using these tools, even some diehard Claude fans are saying that 5.5 Codex is really good. They like it better. We've seen a lot of people actually switch back from Claude 4.7 to 4.6. So that's it. I benchmarks aren't everything. They're a good general way to understand a model and weight a model. But when it comes down to actual usability, even though it's more of an anecdotal thing, builder anecdotes matter. And if there's just some vibe about 5.5, or if it's just producing better regardless of some arbitrary benchmark, I think you do have to listen to the builders. And right now they're saying Codex is where it's at.
Yeah. Let's see. Muriel says, how would you be sure the AI stays on that folder and doesn't go rogue on the computer itself? I don't know.
I have a separate computer that I treat my AI agents on. In theory, they are sandboxed. We've seen them occasionally escape that. But yeah, put it on like an actual virtual machine, separate little machine. If your pictures like are on your desktop and you need to organize them, it, it's a single prompt. Do it, give the permissions, and then revoke the permissions. Really, the danger is when people use agents that just have it like continuously work forever on its own. If you're just having OpenClaw do a one and done, it's not dangerous.
Yeah. Let's see. Muriel again says, how would you be sure the AI stays on that folder and doesn't go rogue? Oh, no, I already mentioned that. I will tie in reference to OpenClaw. What do you guys know about Hermes or Hermes? Is it? That's not probably not Hermes. That's the
I think it's
Dutch
Hermes.
Hermes.
I haven't extensively experimented with it. I would say it's like an OpenClaw competitor. It does some things a little different. I think the idea was treating security with some different considerations. I've heard here and there, but from my circle, I haven't seen like a big adoption. I think of it like the Pepsi to the Coke of OpenClaw.
Okay. Let's see. Muriel again. AI doesn't have the almost intuitive mode humans have to know what not to do. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Like not deleting backups uh, or deleting anything at all. Let's see. John Holman says Cursor is amazing platform. I've heard good things. And then he says users need to build runtime policies, custom prompts for their agents, and quit expecting vanilla instances to work properly.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, all these platforms have different policy engines and different ways to add controls to the agent to allow them to do something or deny it before it even hits human in the loop. You could do that, and then at the system prompt level, there's a lot of things you can do to align the agent to your workflows. I think he's right. What gets into a lot of people is they download it, they tell it what they want to do, and they don't give it any other instructions or security considerations or tell it, hey, this is sensitive or anything like that. So it's a vanilla operation. And so it doesn't have the context to understand what's important, what's not important to your system. And that's really when you see they go rogue. We call it rogue, but you really didn't spend enough time aligning the model to your expectations to begin with.
Yeah, makes sense. Farida, it deleted the trace, and that is alarming because agents will find a way to win at the reward of any cost.
Mm.
Yeah, very goal oriented. Seems even if those goals don't align with ours. And then Farida says they should sync the database with a simple cron script at midnight or preferred time. I remember you mentioning something about cron, something, Chris.
Yeah, cron job is just a script that runs at a specific time. So Farid is just saying that every night at midnight you have your separate backup get in sync with the current prod data. And so basically what would happen is if 8 o'clock in the morning the agent went rogue and deleted everything, you'd only lose 8 hours worth of data instead of the 3 months they lost. Effectively, what you do is you do some math on the amount of money you're willing to lose, the amount of data you're willing to lose, and then that sets your backup cadence. So if it's okay, you lose a week's worth of data for your company, then you back up once a week. If that's unacceptable, then you say, I need to back up every 4 hours because that's the only thing I'm willing to lose. And a cron script will just take care of that. It's not AI. It'll just run on regular intervals.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Will Ty says Elon versus Altman, who wins and what are the possible outcomes? I think we're probably missing a couple names in there. Dario, whatever. And whoever's running Google at this point, I don't even know. He's flying under the radar. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see who wins. I think it's a lot of it seems like a money game at this point. Who's got the money? Because eventually they're just not gonna run out, right?
Yeah.
Unless they get bailed out, like 2008 style. Find out.
You never know.
Farida says Google will always have an edge because they have their compute and chips and data centers. They are sleeping monsters. I think that's kind of ties into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Muriel says, don't know why, but I keep shying away from going all in with Claude. Maybe the token thing getting so expensive. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Claude. We'll see what happens. I think across the board tokens will get more expensive. Oh, everyone's operating at a loss right now, and that won't last.
Yeah. Let's see. John says, all my external agents run Grok 4.1. The price to performance can't be beat. Their platform needs work. Yeah, I was impressed by it. Trenton says, don't forget the OpenAI phone. Is that a real thing?
There's been a bunch of devices that I keep seeing in the pipeline. I know
Really?
they got pushed. I don't know if it's still around, but there was a bunch of rumors on it and a couple proof of concepts. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Let's see. We got a bunch more here. I think this is in regard to the YubiKey. What if the data is hacked? This is from Muriel. What if the data is hacked? Yeah, I might be able to recreate the fingerprint, or the key is destroyed in a fire, lost, somewhere, stolen, etc. Chris mentioned he has a YubiKey just to log into his computer. So I guess personal responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. You're taking personal responsibility. It's not like a silver bullet solution. You're taking away somebody's ability to remotely access your information at the cost of like the security is in your hands. If you don't take good care of your key, it's gone. And if you like my work laptop is completely encrypted and I have a separate key. Keep the key, keep the laptop. If I lose the key, the data's gone. That's when you take like that level of personal responsibility, there's no one who can come and save you and help you.
Yeah. Well,
It's a
makes
trade off.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely a big trade off. Farida says batches can be a temp fix or not the best fix. Human in the loop must be there for judgment. I agree. Sub Stevie, this is when I said I don't know what reflection is. So reflection AI founded by ex DeepMind researchers, Misha Laskin, and that's a hard name to pronounce. I'm sorry. Ionis, focused on building autonomous coding agents, pursuing open source frontier models as a Western counterweight to Chinese labs like DeepSeek. Okay. So now I know what reflection is. Will tie, it's rumored that the ballroom is way more than a ballroom and will include data center with surveillance capabilities for all USA citizens. What is this ballroom thing?
I think that's the White House ballroom.
Oh, interesting. uh, okay, and then the Frida, these agent failures will scale with hefty costs. And here comes Yanli Kun's point that you are creating loopholes and go after fixing them. That wastes compute. They need to change their approach. It's a good point.
It is.
There's going to be a lot of fixing. So, yeah, I think we could wrap it up there. It's been a pretty long stream, a little longer than usual, but I enjoyed it as usual.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
First of all, obviously, thank you to Chris for joining me, committing to these weekly streams. You're a very busy man. I wish I could have seen you here in New York. I'm swamped myself. But yeah, so thanks to Chris. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us in the live chats. Really appreciate it. Subscribe on YouTube and have a great rest of your Saturday. Thank you.